everybody, and welcome to the Revenue Insights podcast. I'm delighted that today I'm joined by Katharine Reagan. My name is Guy Rubin. I'm the CEO of Ebster. And Katharine, perhaps you can introduce yourself.
Sure. Hi, Guy. So great to be here. I'm Katharine Reagan. I am the Chief Revenue Officer at Sago.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. I know you're a fan of the show. Perhaps you could start by introducing us to your role at Sago.
Sure. Thank you so much. I've been at Sago now for about a year, and it has been great. So Sago is a global market research firm, and we focus on all aspects of research. So we deliver qualitative and quantitative research, and we can deliver that on platforms or in person. But basically, our tagline is to solve business questions with human answers.
Oh, wow. Okay. And I know you've only been there for about a year. Is that right?
That's right. I've been here for a year. And prior to Sago, I had a 20-year career at Gartner where I held multiple different sales roles. Probably a pretty standard sales trajectory, starting as a seller, focused on large organizations out on the West Coast. I was based in Seattle at the time. And throughout my time there, I just kind of rose up through the ranks, sales manager, moved to Chicago, ran a region there. And then I moved to the East Coast where I'm based now and focused on Northeast, selling to heads of IT, so chief information officers. And then after that role was really about executing best practices at scale. And after a few years in that role, I moved over to lead a team from a company that we had acquired. It was called Corporate Executive Board. And in that role, my team focused on selling to heads of sales and heads of customer service, which was such a cool job because we were selling sales research and customer service research to basically our own constituency. Fascinating content, and it was really a lot of fun. Moved from there into a digital markets role at Gartner for a few months and got my feet wet in terms of marketing, which is what ultimately led me to Sago, which is a market research firm.
Wow. Okay. What an amazing journey. So you were explaining to me earlier that when you joined Sago, they exclusively had a kind of an inbound motion for sales, but that's not the case anymore, is it?
It's not. We're working really hard to train our team to focus on the outbound motion as well. And yeah, when I came to Sago, we were really dependent on what was going on in the market. So when the market was good and when our clients were buying, we were doing great. But if there was a dip in the market, which is what we were really facing sort of towards the end of 2022, our team struggled because we were just waiting for our clients to come and ask us for essentially for bids for business. And our business is really transactional. What we do here, we sell projects and it's very transactional. And so what I was brought in to do was to help our sellers understand how to focus on more of an outbound motion, how to use data to think about how they go about what they do, and to get kind of more focused on actually going out and prospecting, building a pipeline, and executing deals on our terms versus what the market dictates.
Wow. So it must have been a really interesting journey to take a team that was exclusively just waiting for the opportunity to come to them and take it outbound. And give us an idea of the size of the team. How many people are in the commercial team that you're overseeing?
Sure. So we're a global organization. So I have teams in Europe, North America, as well as Asia. We have about 40 sellers. And then we have 40 what we call account managers, and they're the ones who are more like transactional bidders, and they're seeing our project. You know, the seller goes, finds the deal, they hand it to the account manager who provides pricing, and then ultimately the account manager hands it off to operation.
Wow. Okay. All right. That makes a lot of sense. So, and where, I mean, you've been there for a year now. Has the whole team kind of transitioned across, or is it still a work in progress?
I would say it's probably always going to be a work in progress, but we have really high goals and expectations for what we're trying to do with the team. So the first 6 months really was focused on organization and territories and building territories that made sense. A lot of the people who had come in, we only had player coaches, so we didn't have any kind of true sales managers. And we also had territories that weren't necessarily like channel aligned or industry aligned. And so we spent the first 6 months or so rebuilding the organization so that we could make room for leadership and coaches, as well as get the territories focused on the channel that they're selling into. That was really June through December of last year. And then the last 6 months, we've been focusing on implementing sales process and getting our sellers to be more consistent about how they use technology to manage their funnel, et cetera, and much more of a front-footed go-to-market campaign.
You mentioned technology. So what does the stack look like in the front office?
Yeah, so it's minimal for sure. We do use Salesforce, and we are in the process of implementing CPQ, which is going to be game-changing. Our current technology for pricing is all homegrown. So we're really excited about going onto a world-class platform like Salesforce. And then we have call recording that we just put into place at the beginning of this year, as well as Zoom info. So we can now, and we have also early stages of account-based marketing as well. So we're starting to give the team the tools that they need to be successful.
And I'm fascinated to understand how you put a forecast in place or targets and goals when the team had never gone down that outbound motion before. And then, a year later, how close did you get to the numbers that you and the targets that you set?
So that's such a good question. So I was told when I came in that forecasting wasn't possible in this business. And so we didn't have a pipeline. We had Salesforce, and people actually logged contacts into Salesforce, but they weren't really using the tool super effectively. And so we had some basic framework, it's very inbound. So like we could put things in at like a later stage, and we could track transactional business through that kind of stages 3 and 4 pipeline, but we didn't have any early stage discovery in our pipeline. So we have taught that muscle, and we're starting to really measure the early stage pipeline. And then in January, we drew a line in the sand and we said, we're going to start forecasting now. So we forecast on a monthly basis, and we measure our accuracy against that forecast. We told everybody it was going to be bumpy at first. And it has been a little bit, but we've been pretty good about, getting the forecast in as we expect it. And we're really, really working on accountability to that.
Wow, it's fascinating to see. And I can imagine that over time, you're going to see those numbers come in a lot more in alignment as you start to get that track record of kind of how people are performing.
Right. And the better that we can understand things like deal velocity and how long deals sit in every stage. So one thing that we did along with the forecasting was we created 4 metrics that matter. And as you know, I'm sure, like in sales, you could measure anything. By the way, we were kind of inefficiently measuring every aspect of everything. And so nothing really stuck. So we boiled it down to 4 metrics that matter, which is basically, deal size, pipeline adds, deal velocity, and win rate. And we are now stack ranking our teams on those 4 things. And we're doing red-green analyses. And you're green if you improve month over month. You're red if you go backwards month over month. But at least now we have visibility and dashboards into the things that we think are the most important things that will drive results. So again, we could probably have chosen different metrics. We could probably, there were probably a lot of different ways that we could do it, but we just wanted to get some foundation in place so that we could start to forecast and start to deliver against that forecast in a way that we control versus what the market.
It's fascinating how few sales teams that we talk to are data driven. It's so obvious when you're on the other side of it, right? I couldn't imagine running a sales organization without the data and the insights, but there's still so many sales organizations that are all still based on gut feel, and the numbers are wildly different at the end of the quarter because people are kind of either sandbagging or the opposite and being overly enthusiastic about deals that really aren't real yet. So I absolutely, as you know, I'm a huge fan of these insights and these benchmarks, and absolutely believe that it's the only way to get incremental improvements. And one of the things that we see a lot of is a huge delta between kind of the top performers within these sales organizations and the rest of the sales team. How have you dealt with those challenges?
Yeah. So we also didn't have super great clarity on quotas when I came in either. It was like how much you could sell. So it was just you started at zero at the beginning of the year and then you finished and you were paid based on how much you sold. But there was no, to my knowledge, I could find a specific target assigned to anybody. So we rolled those out again at the beginning of this year so that people knew what they needed to get. And now we're stack ranking people. We're stacking them on performance versus their target, which is pretty obvious. And then also those 4 metrics. And we're seeing the same thing. We're probably closer to 25% are like exceeding target. And this is, by the way, this is such early data. It's just through Q1 this year. But we are seeing that, of course, the top performers are, far and above most of the rest of the team. And there's so much opportunity to learn from what the best people are doing and scale that beyond the team. So those are
I'm a huge fan of that. I think if you don't have top performers achieving, then you might have a product market fit problem, right? But if we've got some sellers actually getting to where we want them to get to, then really it's just about understanding what they're doing differently at every stage of that sales cycle. And we've got some great data points on that. I think we know, for example, at the top of the funnel, the top performers are kind of twice as likely to self-source their own opportunities. And are you using any sort of qualification methodology? Are you kind of a fan of MEDPIC or MEDIC or BANT? Are you using any of those?
So I'm a huge fan of those. And interestingly, in my experience, we didn't use those at my last company. In fact, my last company, we had our own like homegrown sales process, which was super effective. It worked great. Here, we haven't put in, we are teaching so many fundamentals right now that we haven't gone and said, we need to put in MEDPIC. Although I have done some research on that and I think they're great. And in fact, actually in listening to your podcast earlier this week, I called my head of RevOps the other night and I was like, you know what we need to put some of these sales methodologies. So I'm 100% bought in because that will help teach our people to ask better questions. And, when I think about what our best people are doing, they're getting to power and they're asking really good questions. And again, in listening to your sales benchmark report a couple of weeks ago, they talked about getting to power, getting higher up in the organization and bringing multiple decision makers into the project. We do that in pockets, but it's something that we can definitely get better and more consistent at.
Yeah, it's amazing. When we look at the data and when we show a sales team, we do a lot of analysis when we onboard customers and we'll show them how much they win with depending on how multi-threaded they are or how much engagement they have with certain personas or stakeholders. And it's fascinating. If the buying committee is 9 stakeholders and you're only engaging with 3 or 4 of them, then the chances are your competitors are talking to the rest.
Right.
So you need to know who those stakeholders are that drive the right outcomes and really kind of understanding the impact of being more multi-threaded. And when you turn it into a picture, for the sales team, going, look, we win at this level when we have 3 stakeholders actively involved in a sales cycle. But look, when we have 6 or more, look how much more we win. And when you show it to them kind of from a data perspective, we see that the change of behavior is almost immediate.
Yeah.
While salespeople don't like doing admin, when you show them the secret sauce as to how to win, suddenly they want to jump all over it.
Yeah, exactly. And actually, our sellers are pretty good at using the tools that they have. But I feel like I think there is so much more opportunity to enable our sellers through AI-enabled tools, whether it's like the call recording tools, which take all of the notes and give them the opportunity to just leverage that, as opposed to having to record things into Salesforce. Or even I just recently heard about AI tools that'll fill in the whole MEDPIC format for them so that they don't have to go do that. The more that we can get our reps out in front of customers, and giving them the opportunity to, like you said, bring more people into the buying cycle and the decision cycle, the better off they're going to be.
Yeah, we saw a huge drive to train sales reps on how to use things like MEDPIC last year. And then when we analyzed the data 3 months later, no one was filling it in. And which is why we introduced our own Call AI product that takes the call recording and uses AI to pre-populate the MEDPIC and kind of give you a thumbs up or a thumbs down as to whether you qualify the customer well enough to lead discovery. And it's transformational.
Yeah.
Because they all want to do it. But if they don't have to do the admin, suddenly they all love it.
That's right.
And everyone wants to get the green badge, the thumbs up, right? And it's amazing how quickly the behavior changes. Even the average, the B and C players, they only get, I think on average, they only get kind of 3 thumbs down before they change their approach to qualifying, and suddenly they're getting the thumbs up every time. And it's amazing how quickly you can change behavior if you can gamify it, if you can make it easy. And ultimately, the AI can do so much for us these days. But the one thing it can't do is build trust, build relationships. And that's what we're hiring the salespeople to be, these kind of expert advisors for our customers.
That's right. But also having those tools gives our reps the confidence to ask better questions, to go a little bit deeper. And also, I love the idea of like the thumbs up, thumbs down, because then they will potentially ask questions that they may have been uncomfortable asking before. I love it. I think that's great.
No, I completely agree. And when you talk about uncomfortable questions, what are you seeing people are holding back from? Is there anything in particular that you're, any pearls of wisdom you can share that people should be thinking about when they're doing their discovery?
So keep in mind, again, relatively newer to Outbound sales organization, right? So they are very much relationship builders. And so sometimes asking those questions about asking questions about competition or asking questions about pricing, anything that would potentially make them vulnerable in a sale, in most of our minds, right? Those are great questions to understand because then you can start to handle the objections. But I think there are a lot of salespeople out there that are nervous that they're going to get the no or get an answer that they don't know how to hear or an objection that they don't know how to handle. So the more that we can enable objection handling, of course, and then also the more that we can better understand what our clients need so that we can align our solutions against those is great.
Yeah, when we did this analysis, we analyzed kind of 4.2 million opportunities last year. And what was fascinating is that the top performers are closing 30% of their opportunities off as lost at that discovery stage. More of the B and C players really struggle with that kind of, okay, we're not a priority for you right now. We'll re-engage later, but I'm going to close you off as lost. And I'm not going to give you any more of my time. And how are you seeing that? Are you finding that it's kind of difficult to build that muscle with these kind of relationship builders? They don't necessarily want to close things off as lost too quickly.
Right, for sure. And so we have 4 stages in our pipeline. Stage 1 would be discovery, 2 demo, 3 proposal, and 4 negotiating close. And we have so much of our business that sits in that 3 stage, which is reflective of 2 things. First of all, it's inbound. So any inbound request, which again, we're super transactional. So we do have a high volume of inbound requests every single day. And that is a giant percentage of our work. But when you think about like the more strategic sales, when we are getting out in front of it, our projects typically will go in at stage 1 and then we can get to a demo, but they will sit in that stage 3 for a long time and they won't close, which it is a huge opportunity for us to get better hygiene there.
Yeah, deal slippage is a real challenge. In particular, in the last 6 months or so, what we've seen is this kind of false dawn because we saw so much more pipeline being created because there was a lot of inbound or a lot of activity going on. But actually, when deals start to slip, we know that the win rates drop. And momentum is so important. So one of the stats that came out in the report was that if you don't book your next meeting within 7 days of the last one, so it doesn't have to happen, but it has to have been booked, your win rate drops by 65%.
Yeah.
So losing that momentum with the customers is really, really a challenge. And so I think it's fascinating that the challenge we've got, if there are too many opportunities coming in, especially if they're inbound, it's very difficult to turn down this inbound lead that's come in, right?
Sure.
But if it's not with someone that's got power to sign something off, then really all they're going to do is waste your time more often than not. So, and when you've got a high volume of those, but the win rates are quite low, we can end up being kind of busy fools.
Yeah.
Working on these deals. Are you starting to tighten up the kind of criteria of kind of what you're willing to work on or what the team should be willing to work on if you've got all these kind of inbound deals that are coming in, but perhaps getting stuck at that 3rd stage?
Yeah, I mean, I think that's such a huge opportunity. And I think that we can for sure get better. We also track the opposite of that. We track the business that basically comes in and closes on the same week. So we would call that like an intra-month pipeline, I guess, in addition to like the pipeline that we add. So we're looking at both of those things. The 7 day to the next meeting is interesting because years and years ago, there was this sales leader that was coaching me and a number of leaders, and he would talk about the 4-day rule. And in the 4-day rule, he talked about the fact that by the 4th day, the prospect's interest was actually less than it was. It was actually negative to what it was before you even prospected them in the first place. Because if you didn't follow up within basically 3 days, you'd turn that prospect off to a point where they didn't want to engage with you anymore. And so I just find it interesting that, all these years later, the 7-day thing still exists. And it is for sure a true thing. And it's funny, I just used it when I was emailing. I had lunch with a pretty senior executive, and I didn't follow up within 4 days, or actually within like a couple of weeks. And so I reached out to her, and my subject was the 4-day rule. And I explained, I said, I certainly hope that hasn't happened in this situation. And she was really gracious about it. But it has definitely stuck with me, in that we need to make sure that we're really vigilant about following up within, whether it's 4 days or 7 days, but making sure that we are staying in front of the client one way or another.
Yeah, momentum is key. And from what I've seen, that the problem with that stage 3 stuff is it's nothing to do with stage 3. It's all about the discovery we did in the early days, right? Is it really a priority for them? Do they really have a budget? Do we really know who the buying committee is and the decision-making process? All of these things that we didn't really do very well at, but they were really friendly with us on the phone, right? And so we put them in a sales process, and then all of a sudden everything kind of slows right down. So do you see a big impact on win rates when the deals start to slip, when things start to slow down?
No, that's it. But that's such a good metric. So like I said, we're just getting started on these metrics that matter. So like we're such early days. But one thing that you're making me think about is in terms of when a rep puts it in at stage 1. So we are measuring, when a rep puts something in at stage 1 versus when it goes in at stage 3, which is just an inbound request usually. And if they put it in at stage 1, we want to know how long it sits in each stage to get to closure. And then, yes, of course, win rate. And my gut would tell me that the shorter period of time that they're in 3, obviously the win rate should improve, or at least it should close out of it will always close out of the pipeline faster, but I'm really just interested in making sure we move stuff through one way or another. We get to that no, if it's going to be a no, so that we're not wasting our time. I think your benchmark also talked about top performers really being able to utilize their time and prioritize really effectively. And that's something that I've seen here as well. People who really are, treat their time as precious and very much focus on using every hour a day effectively in front of clients, thinking about what they're going to say, are the ones that tend to be more successful.
Yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Well, listen, I really appreciate all your insights today. I think we could go on forever, but unfortunately we're running low on time. But thank you so much for all of your input today. It's been really fascinating. If the audience want to get in touch with you or have some questions, is there a way they can get in touch? Is there how would they reach out to you?
Absolutely. Yeah, of course. I'm on LinkedIn, and I too have really enjoyed our conversation today, Guy. So thank you so much for inviting me to your podcast. And I am absolutely out there and active on LinkedIn, Katharine Reagan at Sago. Thank you.
Very good. Thank you so much for joining us today. And thank you to the audience for listening in, and we'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks so much.